G'day everyone, I bought a kit aircraft and in this video I'm going to tell you how I chose which one I bought. I was looking for a new challenge. I decided to get my pilot's license back. Well, I say back, I decided to get an Australian pilot's license because that's where I live. And I had a UK and American license, so I had to get it converted, which is going very well. Last year my wife and I had a new shed built, and whilst the shed was being built I was thinking to myself, this shed's big enough to build an aeroplane. So it seemed like a good idea at the time, and I've been involved in aviation all my life, but I've never done anything like this before, and it was going to be a big challenge, and that was what I was looking for. I had no idea what was involved, so I started doing some research. I felt I was a pretty pragmatic, practical sort of person, and some new skills would be fun to learn, and significantly, I believed it was within my financial scope. Bear in mind that this was 2021, a year ago. Queensland was one of the stricter states in Australia where COVID-19 was concerned, and I was sitting at home thinking, okay, so what am I going to do? So I got on the internet, looked for the aircraft that I knew were kit products like Kitfox, Vans, Rands, Jabiru, Europa and Sea Ray. I read about them online, I watched YouTube videos, and I discovered Trent Palmer, who has a YouTube channel which has a lot of followers. He flies a Kitfox, which is a single engine, high wing, two-seater, side by side. It's not the fastest aircraft, but speed wasn't an issue for me. Its short field performance is excellent, but again, that's not an issue for me. And so Kitfox seemed to be a good fit at the outset. But I had no idea of costs at this stage. So I continued by browsing the internet, and I found some interesting websites. For example, the Experimental Aircraft Association in the United States has a very good website, and kitplanes.com has a list of kit planes, not surprisingly, but the length of the list is unbelievable. 50 pages with 25 types per page. I couldn't believe how many kit planes there were. Another organisation I found was the SAAA in Australia, the Sport Aircraft Association of Australia. These are a group of like-minded people who build, maintain and operate sport aircraft. And I've joined, and they've been very helpful to me, both the organisation and individuals within the organisation. So I was looking for costs, and so I went onto some websites that sell used aircraft to get a clue about prices, and researched the types of aircraft that were for sale to see if they were supplied as kit-built aircraft like Tecnam, Aeropract, Diamond, Grob, Zenith, Sling. And I found I was getting confused by not just the large number of manufacturers that there are, but also by the number of types that each manufacturer makes. So there are hundreds, literally hundreds of different types of kit aircraft to choose from. So I had to decide, what actually do I want? So I decided to set some specifications for myself. And I started with a number of seats. Did I want a single-seater, two-seater, tandem, side-by-side? Did I want 4 seats? In the end, I decided on 2 seats, side-by-side, because I thought that would give me a good compromise between being able to carry a passenger. I didn't think I was going to be carrying 3 passengers that often. So my wife and I could go places, and a single-seater seemed to be a little bit too small. Speed was not an issue for me, like I said, could be slow or fast. In my opinion, the journey is what's the fun part of flying an aeroplane. It's nice to get to your destination, but I love to fly. Endurance. Now, I don't plan to stay just local, so I might want to cross large spaces in Australia, but I thought anything greater than about 7 hours endurance wouldn't be necessary. And, you know, when you get to my age, I'm, if you excuse the expression, a bit bladder limited anyway. Altitude. No desire to fly above 10,000 feet, don't want to go on oxygen, so I didn't think I would need a turbocharged engine. The engine I thought should be something common, preferably modern, preferably MOGAS. Then when it came to the material of the aircraft, I knew I didn't want a wooden aircraft. Wood and fabric was not what I had in mind, and I preferably didn't want fiberglass because of the having to use breathing apparatus. At least that's what I understand with fiberglass. I don't know whether that's true or not. High wing, low wing, no preference. Folding wings would have been a nice to have. If I couldn't find a hangar, at least I could fold the wings and trailer the aircraft back here. Tricycle or tailwheel. I fancied a tailwheel, and that was really for two reasons. I think tailwheel aircraft look, quite often they look really cool, but I'm out of practice at tailwheel aircraft, and I thought a nose wheel would be a safer bet to start with, and I knew I could convert then, once I'm back in practice, convert back to tailwheel if I wanted to. And I understood that from my research that there are some aircraft that you can convert from nose wheel to tailwheel. The second reason was because many tailwheel aircraft can be fitted with floats. Now, I did a seaplane rating in Canada, in Vancouver, many years ago, and it was the best 7 hours flying I've ever done. It was the most fun. It was fantastic. And I've always hankered after an amphibious aircraft, either a seaplane, a float plane, or a flying boat. An amphibian would be great. However, there are some drawbacks to that which I'll come to later. Now, avionics. I didn't have any preference, so I would need to do some research on that. And again, I'll speak about that later when I get into the narrowing the field. Availability. I want it as soon as possible. I want to get on with this. Now I've taken the decision to buy one. I want to get it here immediately and get on with it. But I did find that during COVID, there were a lot of people like me sitting at home thinking, well, I'll build an airplane. I'm sitting here doing nothing. And so that was one issue that blew out a lot of the waiting times for the kits. The other thing was that the international freight situation became really tricky, unreliable, and expensive. Cost. I had to think about how much I could afford, and I had a figure in my head for the maximum budget, but I pretty quickly found that that budget wasn't going to allow me to buy the sort of aircraft that I thought I would like to build. So I had a choice then. Do I buy a lesser aircraft within my budget, or do I increase the budget and buy the one I want? And so since it was a reasonably arbitrary figure, I made another reasonably arbitrary figure a bit bigger so I can buy the one I wanted. Don't forget, when you're considering cost also, one has to consider the cost of hangarage and insurance and running costs, and also when you're building it, some of the tools can be quite pricey, specialist tools. So anyway, I got on to refining my specifications. Avionics. I rang a couple of local dealers to find out what their thoughts were on avionics, and the thing that convinced me actually was a YouTube video on the channel of a gentleman who calls himself flightjops.com, and he has a video on his channel called Garmin All Access. They freeze, bake, shake all avionics before you fly them. And that video convinced me that Garmin was what I wanted. Now, another aspect of the avionics is whether I wanted to fly VFR or IFR. And for IFR, read expensive, because you've got to have more backups, more redundancy in power supplies and all that sort of thing. So I decided that I'm not current, my instrument rating's not current. I didn't really fancy having to go through the process of getting that back, and so in the end I decided that VFR would suit me fine. I'm only going to be going out there for fun anyway, so I don't really want to be in a situation where I'm ploughing through IMC, pouring rain, icing and all that stuff. Dark. I've done that, and I don't need to do it again. I contacted the agent in Australia for Sling Aircraft, used to be called the Aircraft Factory, and I went down to talk to him. He's only about an hour and a half from here, and he was very helpful in refining what I wanted in terms of the generic aircraft, down to things like lights. Did I want one landing taxi light or in one wing, or did I want it in both wings? That sort of thing. Stick grips, all sorts of little details which he gave me some information about, which was very helpful. I decided to build a spreadsheet, because that's what you do, isn't it? You build a spreadsheet, and at least that's what I did. I revisited the kitplanes.com website and worked my way through the entire list of available aircraft to see whether they fit my general specifications. I also tried to, when I was building this spreadsheet, tried to use comparable units. So I used all metric and I used Australian dollars. So I converted all of the other, there were various currencies, euros and pounds and all sorts of stuff that were in general consideration. I converted them all to Australian dollars at the rate of the day. And I came down to a list which included Vans, the Aircraft Factory Sling or Sling Aircraft Sling 2, the Kitfox Super Sport 7, Sea Ray, Brumby 610, Murphy Rebel, and the Aero Adventure Aventura. Okay, so having come down to that final list, then I had to decide what options and the prices of those options. So some manufacturers provide one light with an option for two, standard brakes, uprated brakes, fixed pitch propeller, variable pitch propeller, wheel spats, angle of attack meter, leather seats, all of these things. Some of them were standard, some of them were options, and I compared. I decided what I wanted and put them all in the spreadsheet. I checked float manufacturers for prices for both straight floats and amphibious floats, and in doing so I found some more types that looked interesting, like Icon, but way out of my price range. So then I started wondering how long it would take to get hold of one of these things, because like I said, that was a critical factor for me. Vans on their website quoted 11 months for the construction of the kit, and then freight from the United States to Australia. Kitfox was saying 2.5 years plus freight time. Sea Ray kind of priced themselves out of the market. Their prices were going up substantially during COVID and with the extra demand. Eurofox also were having difficulty producing enough kits, so they were saying no kits available. I think they were only producing factory-built aircraft. And Sling was saying 7 months plus freight from South Africa. I continued to narrow the field and looked at seaplanes next. So I researched freshwater landing areas around Queensland, and most of the lakes and reservoirs around here are owned and operated by Southeast Queensland Water for the drinking water supply, mainly for Brisbane, but for the whole area. I mean, we're not on drinking water, we're not on town water here, we're on tank water because we're out in the countryside, but most of Brisbane runs off the reservoirs. And they don't allow Southeast Queensland Water don't allow any aircraft operation. So that left seawater operation, and there are plenty of places to go around here where you can operate seaplanes, but the extra workload in always having to wash the aircraft after every flight. I didn't even know whether fresh water was available at some of the aerodromes around here, and the alternative being to trailer the aircraft home and then wash it all seemed a bit like too much trouble. The real decider though for me was that the insurance for seaplanes seemed to be very expensive. I was not quoted by an insurance company, but I understood from the research that insurance for a seaplane is 3 times the price of a land aircraft. So I dropped the idea of an amphibious aircraft. Next I went to tailwheel. Well, the only tailwheel candidate really was Kit Fox. I really wanted a Kit Fox, but 2.5 year wait was too long to wait. Furthermore, the insurance on tailwheel is slightly more than it is for tricycle undercarriage, so I dropped the idea of a Kit Fox. So what did that leave me? It left me with the Vans RV12IS and the Sling Aircraft Sling 2. Both are all metal, riveted semi-monocoque construction. Both are nose wheel. They have similar build times. They both offer quick build kits, but I was interested in doing the whole thing myself, so a slow build. They both offered Rotax engines, which is the sort of engine that I was after. They both offered Garmin Avionics, and I understood that the performance and handling were both excellent and very similar. But I thought, well, I better see if I can fly these aircraft before I buy. So I arranged with the agent for Sling, who operates out of Heckfield down on the Gold Coast, Global Aviation Products. He has been very helpful to me, and he organised for me to fly a Sling 2, and it was everything I'd hoped. You can see what it's like to fly from those various YouTube flight tests. I couldn't find an RV12 to fly. I found one to have a look at, so I had a good climb in and out and looked all around it, but I couldn't fly it. And so I went to the YouTube again to do independent testimonials on the comparisons between Vans aircraft and Sling aircraft, of which there are many. So I was satisfied that the handling of the RV was excellent and the equal of the Sling. To do a comparison of the two types, I tried to use as near the same specification as I could get, use the same numbers where I could get them. As I told you before, I reduced everything to meters or metric measurements and to Australian dollars. And in the prices I included the kit, the engine and propeller, the avionics, the wiring. In the harness I'm going to have to build myself, so I had to make an allowance for wiring and plugs and tools to deal with the plugs. Leather seats, lights, sealant, paint, stick grips, crates for transport from the factory, and the freight cost from the factory. The Sling came out 3.4% more than the Vans RV12IS. I'm going to go through the weights and measurements now of the aircraft, because at this point I had to decide what was going to be most important to me as far as the differences were concerned. Where they were all the same, obviously no difference, but there were obviously going to be certain things which one aircraft had that the other didn't have that were important, and I'm going to cover those now. Before I start with the aircraft weights, the numbers published on the Vans site are for the Vans RV12IS, which has the Rotax 912IS engine, and I'm going for the 912 ULS, which is the carbureted version. And the ULS is about 12 kilos, I believe, lighter than the IS, and I've taken that into consideration in the numbers I'm going to show you now. But the empty weight of the vans was 340 kilos, and for the sling was 370 kilograms, and that will increase depending on the options that you buy. And it will also mean that the useful load decreases correspondingly. The gross weight of the aircraft were 599 kilos and 700 kilos, and the useful load for the vans was 259 kilos or less, depending on the options, and for the sling was 330 kilos or less, depending on the options. The fuel capacity of the two aircraft, the van 76 litres and the sling 150 litres. The van's website says that they can deliver from the factory in 11 months plus the transport time freighting from the USA. Sling told me that they can do it in 7 months with delivery from South Africa, and I kind of have assumed, because of the upheaval in the international freight business at the moment, that the times for transfer from South Africa and from the United States would be approximately similar. I don't know. With vans, I would have to deal directly with the factory in the United States, which is not only in a different time zone, but most of the day is in a different day. The local agent for Sling operates from an airfield about an hour and a half's drive from here, so that is slightly different. The slings are used for schools both in the United States and in Australia, and so I gave me the confidence that the aircraft is robust enough to tolerate flight training, so it'll be robust enough for me. And the other advantage of it is that if there are schools locally that have sling aircraft, when mine is approaching flight, I can go and get current in a sling locally, which would be a good thing. And just as I mentioned before, the sling came out 3.4% more expensive than the vans, and that worked out to, I can't remember, a few thousand, $2,000 or $3,000. That's all the difference was. So what did I buy? In March 2022, I placed an order for a Sling 2, and it is now September, and I understand that the aircraft is about to be transported from South Africa to Australia, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it and building it. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. I will put links to the websites I've mentioned below, and good luck with finding your aircraft.